and more production are needed, headed to a Middle Tennessee community thanks to a huge investment from General Motors. That's some good news.
Walk into any muscle car show and mention transmissions. Within 5 minutes, someone will brag about their Rock Crusher M22. Original, of course, numbers matching. Ask to see the tag, and suddenly they need to check on something. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. That M22 4-speed everyone claims to have. Yeah, GM made about as many of those as they did factory Hemi Cudas with air conditioning. Most people are driving M20s and don't even know it. Chapter 1. The M22 Epidemic. You know what's hilarious about muscle car culture? The ratio of people who claim to own M22 transmissions versus the number GM actually built. If every claimed rock crusher was real, Muncie would have needed to run 3 shifts a day for 50 years. They didn't. Not even close. I've lost count of how many times I've heard it. Guy at a car show, standing next to his Chevelle, telling anyone who will listen about his original rock crusher. Never mind that his car came with a 308 2-barrel and automatic from the factory. Never mind the build sheet shows M20. That whine you hear, that's a rock crusher, friend, except it isn't. The M22 has become the automotive equivalent of a participation trophy everyone awards themselves. It's the transmission everyone wants to have had. We're talking maybe 25,000 total M22s across all applications from 1965 to 74. That's it. That's all of them, spread across nearly a decade of production. Meanwhile, the M20, the regular Muncie 4-speed, was installed in hundreds of thousands of cars, maybe over 1 million total when you count all the applications. Yet somehow, mysteriously, all those M20s have supposedly transformed into M22s over the years. It's automotive alchemy. Base metal turning into gold, except it's more like base transmission, pretending to be unobtainium. The online forums are even worse. Every other post about a 69 Camaro or 70 GTO includes some variation of, pretty sure it's got the rock crusher. Based on what? A sound, a feeling, wishful thinking? The transmission tag is right there, people. It's not hidden. It's not encoded in ancient hieroglyphics. It's stamped right on the side case in plain English. Well, plain alphanumeric codes. But still, here's where it gets interesting. The myth has become so pervasive that people will argue with you even after you show them their transmission tag clearly says P for M20. They'll insist the previous owner swapped the tag, or that GM messed up the stamping, or that their particular car was special. It wasn't special. Your 68 Firebird 400 with automatic in the window sticker wasn't hiding a rock crusher in the garage. That's not how GM worked. The epidemic spreads through restoration shops too. Owners bring in cars for transmission rebuilds, specifically requesting rock crusher internals because that's what it came with. The shop pulls the trans, cracks it open, finds M20 gears, and has to break the bad news. Approximately half the customers accuse the shop of swapping parts. The other half go into denial. A precious few, accept reality and move on. Those are the smart ones. To Chapter 2, what the M22 actually was. Let's talk about what made the M22 special, because there's a reason everyone wants one. The Muncie M22 Rock Crusher wasn't just a marketing name. It was a genuinely different transmission, built for a specific purpose that most muscle cars never needed. The basic Muncie 4-speed, the M20, was a good transmission. Strong, reliable, handled 400 horsepower without complaining. It used helical cut gears, which are angled teeth that mesh smoothly and quietly. This is what your dad's Impala had. This is what 99% of 4-speed GM products used. The helical gears were cut at roughly a 45-degree angle, creating a sliding engagement that was smooth and relatively quiet. The M22 said screw smooth and quiet. It used straight cut gears, or more accurately, gears cut at a 10-degree angle instead of 45. This created a completely different engagement pattern. Instead of sliding into mesh, the teeth slammed together like they were angry. This created the famous whine, that straight-cut gear scream that sounds like a supercharger having an argument with a banshee. But here's the thing. GM didn't build the M22 to sound cool. They built it because racers kept destroying M20 transmissions. Not street racers, not weekend warriors. professional drag racers running NHRA, super stock and modified production classes. These guys were launching at 6,000 RPM with slicks, dumping the clutch, and making the M20 gears cry for mercy. The helical gears in the M20 had a weakness under extreme loads. That 45-degree cut created thrust forces trying to push the gears apart. Under normal driving, no problem. Under race conditions with sticky tires and race clutches and power-shifted 7,000 RPM, those thrust forces would overpower the synchros and break things, expensive things. The M22's 10-degree cut reduced those thrust forces by 75%. The gears stayed meshed under loads that would grenade an M20. The trade-off was noise and harshness. The M22 was objectively worse for street driving. It whined constantly. The shifts were notchy and required more effort. It was louder, rougher, and less pleasant in every measurable way except one. It could survive abuse that would turn an M20 into modern art. The input shaft was different too. Thicker, stronger, 26 spline instead of the M20's 10 spline. Wait, no. The M20 was also 26 spline. See, even the basic specs get confused in the mythology. Both used 26 spline input shafts. The difference was in the diameter and material treatment. The M22 shaft was case-hardened differently to handle higher shock loads. The cluster gear, the big gear in the middle that everything connects to, was also beefed up. Wider teeth, better material, improved heat treatment. Every internal component in the M22 was designed to survive conditions that would never occur in street driving. It was overkill for 99% of applications, which is exactly why GM barely built any. Chapter 3. The numbers that destroy dreams. Let's destroy some dreams with facts. Actual production numbers for the M22 Rock Crusher. Ready? From 1965, when the M22 was first introduced as a racing option, through 1974 when GM finally killed the Muncie, total M22 production was somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 units. Nobody knows exactly because GM's records from the era are incomplete, but that's the range. Let's be generous and call it 30,000 M22. Transmissions across all GM divisions, all models, all years, all applications for an entire decade. Meanwhile, GM was building 3 million cars a year with 4-speed manual transmissions. Do the math. If M22s were evenly distributed across that decade, which they weren't, you're looking at 3,000 per year. That's 0.1% of total 4-speed production. 0.1%. But it gets worse. The M22 wasn't distributed evenly. Some years, GM built maybe 500. Other years, maybe 5,000, depending on racing homologation requirements and dealer orders. The peak was probably 1969 to 70, when Copo Camaros and Yenko Chevelles were a thing. Even then, you're talking low thousands, not tens of thousands. Here's what that means in practical terms. If you're at a car show with 100 muscle cars, statistically, maybe one of them legitimately has an M22. It's a maybe. More likely 0. Yet, if you ask around, 20 guys will claim rock crushers. The math doesn't math. Let me put this in perspective. GM built approximately 10,000 442 Oldsmobile engines in 1970. That's a 1-year-only engine in one division. The M22, across all divisions and all years, was maybe 3 times that total. Finding a real 442 is hard. Finding a real M22 should be 3 times easier, which still means incredibly rare. Yet people trip over 442s at shows and claim M22s are everywhere. It's backwards. The 1969 Camaro, peak muscle car year, had the M22 available as our PO M22 for exactly $295. Sounds like a lot of people should have ordered it, right? Wrong. Total 1969. Camaro M22 production was probably under 2,000 units. Total 69, Camaro production was over 240,000. That's less than 1% of Camaros got rock crushers, and that was the most popular application. Corvettes had better M22 penetration, maybe 5 to 10% of 4-speed cars in racing years. But Corvette production was only 35,000 per year total. So even if 10% of 4-speeds were M22, you're talking maybe 1,500 Corvettes per year with rock crushers. Good luck finding one. The rarest M22s were probably in full-size cars. Yes, you could get a rock crusher in a Caprice or Impala if you were insane and ordered the right engine and performance axle and convinced a dealer to special order it. GM probably built dozens of these, literally dozens across all years. If you own one, cherish it, you have automotive unobtainium. If you think you own one, you're almost certainly wrong. Chapter 4. The M20 Masquerade. Here's why the confusion exists. The M20 and M22 look almost identical from the outside. Same case, same tail housing, same basic dimensions. You can't tell them apart without looking at the tag or pulling the side cover. This has created 50 years of mistaken identity. The transmission tag is a small aluminum plate on the driver's side of the case. It's stamped with a code that tells you everything. The M20 tag starts with a P. The M22 tag starts with an R. That's it. That's the difference. One letter, P for the M20, R for the M22. If your tag says P, you don't have a rock crusher. End of story. But here's where people get creative. The tag falls off, or gets lost during a rebuild, or someone swapped it, or the previous owner's cousin's friend said it was a rock crusher, so it must be. Tag be damned. The excuses are endless and creative and almost always wrong. The sound is the other big confusion point. People hear a whine from their M20 and assume it's the famous rock crusher sound. Newsflash, all Muncie 4 speeds whine somewhat, especially when they're worn or low on fluid or have been rebuilt with cheap gears. That whine you're hearing isn't the glorious scream of straight-cut M22 gears. It's the sad wheeze of a worn M20 begging for fresh oil. A real M22 sounds different. It's not just louder, it's a different frequency, a higher pitch, a more aggressive tone. It sounds mechanical and angry, like the transmission is mad at you for making it work. An M20 whine is background noise. An M22 whine is the main event. If you have to turn up the radio to hear it, it's not an M22. The shift feel is another tell. M22s shift harder. The synchros engage with more force. There's more notchiness, more resistance, more mechanical feedback. An M20 shifts smoothly, almost like butter when it's fresh. An M22 shifts like you're stirring gravel, if your 4-speed is smooth and pleasant. Congratulations, you have an M20, which is fine. The M20 is a good transmission, just not a rock crusher. Weight is technically different too. The M22 weighs maybe 5 pounds more than an M20 due to the beefier internals. Good luck telling the difference when it's installed in a car. You're not going to pick up a subtle weight difference through the floor pan. This is a bench racing spec that means nothing in real life. The gear ratios are identical between M20 and M22. 2.2, 0 first gear, 1.64 second, 1.28 third, 1:1 fourth. Same ratios, same spacing, same everything except the gear cut angle and material strength. You cannot identify an M22 by how it accelerates or what RPM drop you get between gears. They're the same. Here's the real test. Pull the side cover. If you see straight cut gears with shallow angles, it's an M22. If you see helical gears with deep angles, it's an M20. There's no ambiguity when you can actually see the gears. But most people never pull the cover. They just assume and claim and perpetuate the myth. Chapter 5. Who really got rock crushers? So, who actually got M22 transmissions from the factory? The answer is narrower than you think. First, you needed the right engine. The M22 was never available with small blocks below 396 cubic inches. Never. If your car has a 350 or a 307, it doesn't have an M22. GM didn't even offer it. You needed minimum a big block, or the top-tier small blocks like the LT1 or Zia 28 solid lifter engines. Second, you needed to order it. The M22 was never standard equipment, ever. It was always optional, always extra cost, always required checking a specific box on the order form. The regular M20 was standard with 4-speed cars. Upgrading to M22 cost between $200 and $300 depending on year and model. In 1969, money, that was serious cash. Most people saved the money and took the M20. Third, your dealer had to approve it. Not every dealer understood what the M22 was or why anyone would want it. Some dealers refused to order them because they didn't want to explain to customers why their transmission sounded like a lumber mill. Other dealers didn't know the option existed. You needed a performance-oriented dealer who understood racing homologation and didn't mind special orders. Fourth, John M. had to actually have one available. Production was limited. If you ordered an M22 in November and GM had already allocated their annual production run, you got an M20. Build constraints meant not everyone who wanted a rock crusher got one. The most common M22 applications were Copo Camaros, Yenko Chevelle, Baldwin motion cars, and other dealer performance builds. These were special order, high-performance machines built in tiny numbers. A Copo 969 Camaro with the ZL1, all-aluminum 427, got an M22 as part of the package. GM built 69 of those. Total. Why, 69 ZL. 1 Camaros equals 69. M22s right there. Corvettes got M22s more often than other cars, but still not commonly. The RPO was M22, cost $265 in 1969, and was only available with the L88 or L89 big blocks, and later with the LS6. These were race-oriented engines that justified the rock crusher. A regular 350 or 454 Corvette with an M20 was perfectly adequate. Chevelle with LS 6454 engines could get M22s. Some did. Most didn't. The LS6 made 450 horsepower, which was enough to justify the rock crusher, but most buyers were street cruisers who didn't want the noise. They ordered the M20 and lived happily ever after. The few who got M22s were usually drag racers or people who knew what they were buying. GTOs, funny enough, rarely got M22s. Pontiac had their own ideas about transmissions and preferred the Muncie M20 for street cars. The few M22-equipped GTOs were special orders or dealer modifications. Same with Buick GSX models and Olds 442 W30s. Possible to get an M22, but rare. Trans Ams, believe it or not, got M22s more often than you'd think. The SD 455 Trans Am in 1973 came standard with an M22. GM built 295 SD Trans Ams that year. That's nearly 300 M22s in Trans Ams alone for 1 year. Still rare, but higher concentration than most models. Chapter 6. The Sound of Legend. Let's talk about the sound, because the M22 whine has become its own mythology. People describe it like it's a religious experience. The scream of the rock crusher, the song of straight-cut gears, the mechanical symphony of American muscle. Here's the reality. The M22 sounds like you forgot to put gear oil in your transmission. That's the sound. It's loud, it's constant, it's annoying on long drives. You can't have a conversation at highway speeds without shouting. The radio is pointless. Your passengers will ask if something's broken. This is not a pleasant sound. It's a mechanical reality of straight-cut gears meshing under load. But in muscle car culture, that awful whine became desirable. It became proof you had the real deal. It became a status symbol, worth the headache. Car guys would hear that scream and know immediately that's an M22, respect earned through mechanical violence. The problem is, people started confusing any transmission noise with rock crusher sounds. M20s that were low on fluid or had worn bearings would whine. Guys would hear it and convince themselves they had an M22. Soon every whining transmission became a rock crusher in someone's mind. The aftermarket caught on quick. Companies started making straight-cut gear sets for M20 cases, letting people build M22 clones. These became popular with drag racers who wanted M22 strength without finding an actual M22 core. Soon the streets had real M22s, fake M22s, and worn M20s all whining together, and nobody could tell which was which by sound alone. Some guys even piped exhaust noise into the cabin to make their transmission sound more aggressive. I'm not making this up. There were actual products marketed to make your transmission sound tougher, because nothing says performance like artificial gear, whine through your stereo speakers. The M22 sound became so legendary that Muncie eventually marketed it. Later year promotional materials actually mentioned the distinctive gear whine as a feature, not a bug. They leaned into it. Your transmission sounds like it's destroying itself. That's the rock crusher experience, baby. enjoy the mechanical cacophony. Chapter 7. Why GM barely built them. Here's the question nobody asks. If the M22 was so much stronger and better, why didn't GM just make all Muncie 4-speeds rock crushers? Why offer the weaker M20 at all? Money. Always money. The M22 cost GM approximately $75 to $100 more to manufacture than an M20. The straight-cut gears were more expensive to produce. The heat treatment process was longer and more complex. The quality control was stricter because racing parts couldn't fail. The labor hours were higher. Every M22 built cost GM real money compared to an M20. Now multiply that by hundreds of thousands of transmissions per year. If GM switched entirely to M22 production, they'd add $50 million to their annual transmission costs, minimum. That's 1970 money. Adjust for inflation, and you're talking $200 million today. For what benefit? The average Malibu buyer didn't need a rock crusher. They needed reliable transportation. The M20 provided that for $75 less per unit. GM would lose money building M22s for customers who didn't need them and wouldn't pay extra for them. The engineering team knew this. They studied failure rates. M20S failed in racing conditions, not street conditions. Street-driven M20S were lasting 100,000 miles plus. There was no engineering justification for upgrading every customer to M22s when the M20 was adequate for 99% of use cases. The noise factor was huge too. GM didn't want every Chevelle and Camaro sounding like a race car at idle. The marketing department understood that most customers wanted quiet, smooth transmissions. The M22 was neither. Building it as standard equipment would create customer complaints and warranty claims from people who thought their transmission was broken. Racing homologation drove what little M22 production existed. NHRA and other sanctioning bodies required minimum production numbers to qualify engines and parts for competition. GM built just enough M22s to satisfy those rules and homologate the cars they wanted to race. Once the minimums were met, production dropped to special orders only. The dealer network also limited M22 proliferation. Most dealers didn't want to explain to customers why the upgrade costs $300 and made the car louder. Easier to sell them an M20 and move on. Performance dealers understood and pushed M22s, but they were a minority of the network. Chapter 8. The Restoration Racket. The M22 myth has created a cottage industry of deception and wishful thinking in the restoration world. People will spend thousands chasing something their car never had. Here's how it works. Guy buys a numbers-matching Chevelle. Build sheet says M20, tag says P code. Every piece of documentation points to M20, but the guy heard M22s are worth more. So he decides his car must have had one originally and someone swapped it. He starts searching for an M22 core. Real ones cost $5,000 to $10,000 for rebuildable units. Fresh rebuilds run $15,000 to $20,000 for a transmission that his car never had. That won't increase value because judges know the car came with an M20, but logic doesn't matter when mythology is involved. Or worse, he buys a fake. The market is full of M20 cases with M22 tags swapped on. Or M20s with straight-cut aftermarket gears and R-code stamps added by clever machinists. These sell for M22 money to people who don't know how to verify authenticity. It's fraud, but proving it requires expertise most buyers lack. Restoration shops play both sides. Honest shops tell customers the truth and lose the sale to dishonest shops willing to confirm the car needs an M22. The dishonest shops make bank installing fake rock crushers in cars that never had them, charging M22 prices for M20 work. The judging at concours events has gotten stricter to combat this. Judges now pull side covers and verify gear cuts. They check casting numbers and date codes. They cross-reference build sheets and broadcast sheets. The days of slapping an R-code tag on an M20 and fooling judges are mostly over. But the scam still works on private buyers. Insurance is another nightmare. Guy insures his car as having an original M22, inflating the agreed value by $10,000. Car gets stolen or totaled. Insurance investigator discovers it was actually an M20, claim denied for misrepresentation. This happens more than you'd think. The restoration costs for actual M22s are astronomical. Finding correct parts is nearly impossible. Original M22 gears, if you can source them, cost thousands per set. Most rebuilders use aftermarket straight cut gears, which work fine but aren't original. For Concours restorations, that's a problem. Chapter 9. Finding a real one. So what if you actually want to find a real M22? Good luck, but here's what to look for. The tag is first. R-code stamp on the aluminum tag attached to the driver's side case. The tag should match the casting date codes on the case itself, usually within weeks. Mismatched dates mean someone's lying. Pull the side cover and look at the gears. Straight cut at 10 degrees. If they're helical at 45 degrees, it's an M20 with a fake tag. This is the only verification that matters. Everything else can be faked. Check the input shaft splines. Both M20 and M22 are 26 spline, so this doesn't help differentiate. But the shaft diameter and material hardness are different. You need micrometers and hardness testing to verify. Most people skip this. Verify the casting numbers match known M22 production. The main case should have specific casting marks. These are documented in Muncie reference guides. Wrong castings mean wrong transmission, regardless of what the tag says. Cross-reference with the car's documentation. Build sheet, Protect O-plate, window sticker, dealer invoice. If none of these show M22 RPO, the transmission is probably swapped in. Real numbers. Matching M22 cars have paper trails. Be prepared to pay. Real M22 cores in rebuildable condition start at $5,000 and go up fast. Fresh professional rebuilds are $15,000 to $25,000 depending on correctness and parts availability for a transmission. This is not a budget-friendly quest. The best place to find them is estate sales from original owners or barn finds that haven't been picked over. These occasionally surface with original M22s still installed. Once word gets out, the price skyrockets. Move fast or lose out. Chapter 10. The Myth That Won't Die. Here's what fascinates me about the M22 mythology. It persists despite overwhelming evidence against it, despite production numbers, despite tag codes, despite the fact that pulling a side cover takes 10 minutes and settles every argument instantly. The myth persists because people want to believe. They want their car to be special. They want the rock crusher because it represents the ultimate. Never mind that the M20 is 99% as good for street use. Never mind that the M22 is objectively worse for daily driving. It's the badge, the bragging rights, the mythology. This tells us something about car culture. We fetishize rarity over usefulness. We value mythology over reality. We'll spend thousands proving our car has something it doesn't need just to claim we have it. It's not rational. It's tribal. The M22 myth also reveals how corporations accidentally create legends. GM built the Rock Crusher as a narrow-use racing part. They never intended it to become a status symbol. They never marketed it as the ultimate muscle car transmission. They just offered it as RPOM22 for guys who needed stronger gears. Somehow, that utilitarian purpose became mystical. Modern car culture could learn from this. Not every special part is necessary. Not every upgrade is worth chasing. Sometimes the standard equipment is exactly what you need, and the exotic upgrade is expensive overkill. The M20 was a damn good transmission that served millions of cars perfectly well. It doesn't need to pretend to be an M22 to have value. The internet has made the myth worse in some ways, better in others. Worse because misinformation spreads faster than ever. Every forum has some guy insisting his Uncle Chevelle had a rock crusher based on absolutely nothing. Better because the correct information is also available. The people who want truth can find it. The people who want mythology will find that too. What's the right answer? If you legitimately have an M22, cherish it. You own a rare piece of GM performance history. If you have an M20, appreciate it for what it is. A robust, reliable transmission that made muscle cars usable. If you're lying about having an M22, stop. You're embarrassing yourself to anyone who knows what they're looking at. The M22 rock crusher is a perfect storm of engineering necessity, limited production, and accidental mythology. GM built just enough to homologate racing parts and satisfy the few customers who genuinely needed them. They never intended to create a legend, but by making them rare and purposeful and distinctly different, they created the ultimate might have been for muscle car owners. That's the real story of the M22. Not that everyone had one, not that they were common or easily available, but that GM built exactly as many as the market needed, and 50 years later, everyone wishes they had built more. The transmission itself is secondary to the mythology it created. And maybe that's the point. The best automotive legends aren't about what was. They're about what might have been. So next time someone at a car show tells you about their rock crusher, smile and nod. Ask to see the tag. 99 times out of 100, it'll say P, and that's fine. The M20 is a good transmission. It doesn't need to pretend to be something else, unless, of course, it really is an R code, in which case, you just met someone with actual unobtainium. Treat them with the respect and skepticism they deserve.